Numbers chapters 30 and 31. And Moses spoke to the children of Israel according to all that the Lord commanded Moses. And Moses spoke to the heads of the tribes of the children of Israel, saying, This is the thing which the Lord has commanded. Whatsoever man shall vow a vow to the Lord, or swear an oath, or bind himself with an obligation upon his soul, he shall not break his word. All that shall come out of his mouth he shall do. And if a woman shall vow a vow to the Lord, or bind herself with an obligation in her youth in her father's house, and her father should hear her vows and her obligations, wherewith she has bound her soul, and her father should hold his peace at her, then all her vows shall stand, and all the obligations with which she has bound her soul shall remain to her. But if her father straitly forbid her, in the day in which she shall hear her vows and her obligations, which she has contracted upon her soul, they shall not stand, and the Lord shall hold her guiltless, because her father forbade her. But if she should be indeed married, and her vows be upon her according to the utterance of her lips, in respect to the obligations which she has contracted upon her soul, and her husband should hear, and hold his peace at her in the day in which he should hear, then thus shall all her vows be binding, and her obligations which she has contracted upon her soul shall stand. But if her husband should straitly forbid her in the day in which he should hear her, none of her vows or obligations which she has contracted upon her soul shall stand, because her husband has disallowed her, and the Lord shall hold her guiltless. And the vow of a widow, and of her that is put away, whatsoever she shall bind upon her soul, shall stand to her. And if her vow be made in the house of her husband, or the obligation upon her soul with an oath, and her husband should hear, and hold his peace at her, and shall not disallow her, then all her vows shall stand, and all the obligations which she contracted against her soul shall stand against her. But if her husband should utterly cancel the vow in the day in which he shall hear it, none of the things which shall proceed out of her lips in her vows, and in the obligations contracted upon her soul, shall stand to her. Her husband has cancelled them. The Lord shall hold her guiltless. Every vow and every binding oath to afflict her soul, her husband shall confirm it to her, or her husband shall cancel it. But if he be wholly silent at her from day to day, then shall he bind upon her all her vows, and he shall confirm to her the obligations which she has bound upon herself, because he held his peace at her in the day in which he heard her. And if her husband should in any wise cancel them after the day in which he heard them, then he shall bear his iniquity. These are the ordinances which the Lord commanded Moses between a man and his wife, and between a father and daughter in her youth in the house of her father. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Avenge the wrongs of the children of Israel on the Midianites, and afterwards thou shalt be added to thy people. And Moses spoke to the people, saying, Arm some of you, and set yourselves in array before the Lord against Midian, to inflict vengeance on Midian from the Lord. Send 1,000 of each tribe from all the tribes of the children of Israel, to set themselves in array. And they numbered of the thousands of Israel 1,000 of each tribe, 12,000. These were armed for war. And Moses sent them away 1,000 of every tribe with their forces, and Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest. The holy instruments and the signal trumpets were in their hands. And they set themselves in array against Midian, as the Lord commanded Moses, and they slew every male. And they slew the kings of Midian, together with their slain subjects, even Evi and Rokon, and Sur, and Ur, and Robok, 5 kings of Midian. And they slew with the sword Balaam, the son of Beor, with the other slain. And they made a prey of the women of Midian, and their store, and their cattle, and all their possessions, and they spoiled their forces. And they burnt with fire all their cities and the place of their habitation, and they burnt their villages with fire. And they took all their plunder, and all their spoils, both man and beast. And they brought to Moses and to Eleazar the priest, and to all the children of Israel, the captives, and the spoils, and the plunder, to the camp of Arabah Moab, which is at Jordan by Jericho. And Moses and Eleazar the priest, and all the rulers of the synagogues went forth out of the camp to meet them. And Moses was angry with the captains of the host, the heads of the thousands, and the heads of hundreds, who came from the battle array. And Moses said to them, Why have ye saved every female alive? For they were the occasion to the children of Israel by the word of Balaam, of the revolting and despising the word of the Lord, because of Phogor. And there was a plague in the congregation of the Lord. Now then, slay every male and all the spoil, slay every woman who has known the lying with the man. And as for all the captivity of women, who have not known the lying with man, save ye them alive. And ye shall encamp outside the great camp 7 days. Every one who has slain and who touches the dead body shall be purified on the 3rd day. And ye in your captivity shall purify yourselves on the 7th day. Ye shall purify every garment, and every leathern utensil, and all the furniture of goatskin, and every wooden vessel. And Eleazar the priest said to the men of the host that came from the battle array, that this is the ordinance of the law which the Lord has commanded Moses, beside the gold, and the silver, and the brass, and the iron, and lead, and tin. Everything that shall pass through the fire shall be clean. Nevertheless, it shall be purified with the water of sanctification. And whatsoever will not pass through the fire shall pass through water. And on the 7th day you shall wash your garments and be clean, and afterwards you shall come into the camp. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Take the sum of the spoils of the captivity, both of the man and beast, thou and Eleazar the priest, and the heads of the families of the congregation. And ye shall divide the spoils between the warriors that went out to battle, and the whole congregation. And ye shall take a tribute for the Lord from the warriors that went out to battle, 1 soul out of 500, from the men, and from the cattle, even from the oxen, and from the sheep, and from the asses, and ye shall take from their half. And thou shalt give them to Eleazar the priest, as the firstfruits of the Lord. And from the half belonging to the children of Israel, thou shalt take 1 in 50 from the men, and from the oxen, and from the sheep, and from the asses, and from all the cattle, and thou shalt give them to the Levites that keep the charges in the tabernacle of the Lord. And Moses and Eleazar the priest did as the Lord commanded Moses. And that which remained of the spoil which the warriors took was of the sheep 675,000, and oxen 72,000, and asses 61,000. The persons of women who had not known lying with man, all the souls 32,000, and the half, even the portion of them that went out to war, for the number of the sheep was 337,500. And the tribute to the Lord from the sheep was 675, and the oxen 36,000, and the tribute to the Lord 72, and asses 30,500, and the tribute to the Lord 61, and the persons 16,000, and the tribute of them to the Lord 32 souls. And Moses gave the tribute to the Lord, the heave offering of God, to Eleazar the priest, as the Lord commanded Moses, from the half belonging to the children of Israel, whom Moses separated from the men of war. And the half taken from the sheep belonging to the congregation was 337,500, and the oxen 36,000, asses 30,500, and persons 16,000. And Moses took of the half belonging to the children of Israel the 50th part of men and of cattle, and he gave them to the Levites who keep the charge of the tabernacle of the Lord, as the Lord commanded Moses. And all those who were appointed to be officers of thousands of the host, captains of thousands, and captains of hundreds, approached Moses, and said to Moses, Thy servants have taken the sum of the men of war with us, and not one is missing. And we have brought our gift to the Lord, every man who has found an article of gold, whether an armlet, or a chain, or a ring, or a bracelet, or a clasp for hair, to make atonement for us before the Lord. And Moses and Eleazar the priest took the gold from them, and even every wrought article. And all the wrought gold, even the offering that they offered to the Lord, was 16,750 shekels from the captains of thousands and the captains of hundreds. For the men of war took plunder every one for himself. And Moses and Eleazar the priest took the gold from the captains of thousands and the captains of hundreds, and brought the vessels into the tabernacle of witness, a memorial of the children of Israel before the Lord. Psalm 50, 51 in Hebrew. For the end, a psalm of David, when Nathan the prophet came to him, when he had gone into Beersheba. Have mercy upon me, O God, according to thy great mercy, and according to the multitude of thy compassions, blot out my transgression. Wash me thoroughly from mine iniquity, and cleanse me from my sin. For I am conscious of mine iniquity, and my sin is continually before me. Against thee only have I sinned, and done evil before thee, that thou mightest be justified in thy sayings, and mightest overcome when thou art judged. For behold, I was conceived in iniquities, and in sins did my mother conceive me. For behold, thou lovest truth. Thou hast manifested to me the secret and hidden things of thy wisdom. Thou shalt sprinkle me with hyssop, and I shall be purified. Thou shalt wash me, and I shall be made whiter than snow. Thou shalt cause me to hear gladness and joy. The afflicted bones shall rejoice. Turn away thy face from my sins, and blot out all mine iniquities. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit in my inward parts. Cast me not away from thy presence, and remove not thy Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of thy salvation, establish me with thy directing spirit. Then will I teach transgressors thy ways, and ungodly men shall turn to thee. Deliver me from blood guiltiness, O God, the God of my salvation, and my tongue shall joyfully declare thy righteousness. O Lord, thou shalt open my lips, and my mouth shall declare thy praise. For if thou desiredest sacrifice, I would have given it. Thou wilt not take pleasure in whole burnt offerings. Sacrifice to God is a broken spirit. A broken and humbled heart God will not despise. Do good, O Lord, to Sion in thy good pleasure, and let the walls of Jerusalem be built. Then shalt thou be pleased with the sacrifice of righteousness, offering, and whole burnt sacrifices. Then shall they offer calves upon thine altar. Proverbs chapter 10, verses 22 through 26. The blessing of the Lord is upon the head of the righteous. It enriches him, and grief of heart shall not be added to it. A fool does mischief in sport, but wisdom springs forth prudence for a man. The ungodly is engulfed in destruction, but the desire of the righteous is acceptable. When the storm passes by, the ungodly vanishes away, but the righteous turns aside and escapes forever. As the sour grape is hurtful to the teeth, and smoke to the eyes, so iniquity hurts those that practice it. The Holy Gospel according to St. Mark, chapter 5, verses 21 through 43. And when Jesus was passed over again by ship unto the other side, much people gathered unto him, and he was nigh unto the sea. And behold, there cometh one of the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus by name. And when he saw him, he fell at his feet, and besought him greatly, saying, My little daughter lieth at the point of death. I pray thee, come and lay thy hands on her, that she may be healed, and she shall live. And Jesus went with him, and much people followed him, and thronged him. And a certain woman, which had an issue of blood of 12 years, and had suffered many things of many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was nothing bettered, but rather grew worse, when she had heard of Jesus, came in the press behind, and touched his garment. For she said, If I may touch but his clothes, I shall be whole. And straightway the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of that plague. And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself that virtue had gone out of him, turned him about in the press, and said, Who touched my clothes? And his disciples said unto him, Thou seest the multitude thronging thee, and sayest thou, Who touched me? And he looked round about to see her that had done this thing. But the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what was done in her, came and fell down before him, and told him all the truth. And he said unto her, Daughter, thy faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace, be whole thy plague. While he yet spake, there came from the ruler of the synagogue's house certain, which said, Thy daughter is dead. Why troublest thou the master any further? As soon as Jesus heard the word that was spoken, he said unto the ruler of the synagogue, Be not afraid, only believe. And he suffered no man to follow him, save Peter, and James, and John the brother of James. And he cometh to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, and seeth the tumult, and them that wept and wailed greatly. And when he was come in, he saith unto them, Why make ye this ado, and weep? The damsel is not dead, but sleepeth. And they laughed him to scorn. But when he had put them all out, he taketh the father and the mother of the damsel, and them that were with him, and entereth in where the damsel was lying. He took the damsel by the hand, and said to her, Talitha cumi, which is, being interpreted, Damsel, I say unto thee, arise. And straightway the damsel arose, and walked, for she was of the age of 12 years. And they were astonished with a great astonishment. And he charged them straitly that no man should know it, and commanded that something should be given her to eat.